Hello and welcome to video 3 of the AP Manager module. In this video, we'll cover the Open Invoice list. The Open Invoice list is going to contain all of your future invoices. This is going to be 2 periods in the future and forward. So it's currently September. I will not see October and November, but we'll see December and forward. Now the catch with that is, if I come over to the period column, you should start by seeing December 2018. However, if I sort it in ascending order, you will see that I have some past period invoices here. If you see past period invoices, it's because they have an exception and cannot move forward. If I scroll back over to the left, to the exceptions column, there is some sort of exception. Now within the exceptions column, you can have numerous types of exceptions, like a missing remit to, missing GL account, payment on hold. If you have some sort of workflow license, there might be some sort of workflow error. The exceptions are going to tell you what the problem is. It will be a hyperlink, so if you click it, it will take you to the screen where you can fix the problem. So you can make whatever change you need to clear that exception. If you click the Missing Remit to hyperlink, it's going to take you directly to the charge detail screen where you can enter the remit to. So if we scroll down here to the expense section, we can select the remit to, and then we'll click update. And once it's done updating, if you go back to the Open Invoice list and refresh, it will clear all invoices with that exception for that charge. So we can close this, and then we'll just click F5 to refresh the screen. Once the exception has been cleared, those invoices will move into the invoices to be processed container if they are 2 periods into the future. For the exceptions, it is a best practice to come in once a month and check to see what you have to ensure you are not missing any payments or have anything blocking your payments moving forward. So moving over here to the right, you will see the property and lease columns, which lets you know what property and lease this invoice is for. Next to that, we have the invoice number column. Now for all of our system generated invoices, those numbers will be automatically assigned. The invoice number is a hyperlink, so if you click on one, it will take you to the invoice information edit screen, and it will show you the data in invoice form. Before we do so, I want to filter it down to our AP training lease so that we can look at one that has a base rent charge and a rent tax charge. Okay, so if we go ahead and click on the invoice number hyperlink, again, it's going to open the invoice information edit screen. Now you'll notice a lot of these fields cannot be edited. That's because the system invoices are read-only. You cannot make changes to them. If this were a manual invoice, you would be able to edit it, and we'll discuss this later when we build out a manual invoice. For now, if we scroll down to the right here, you'll see the detail lines below, which is showing you the breakdown of the charges that this invoice is actually for. So our first line here is the base rent charge. It's showing you what space it's for, again, the payment type base rent, the GL account number, the currency, the tax code if applicable, the description, the allocation, and then the amount. Now down below that is a separate line that we have for the rent tax. It's showing you the exact same information, and then again over here at the end, the amount. Now with the allocation, you do have the allocations button at the top here. If you wanted to see the specific breakdown of the departments it is being allocated to. So if we select the button, it will show you the actual percentages and then the amount per department. This is a quick breakdown screen you can access from the invoice. Go ahead and close that. Lastly, on this screen, you do have the ability to upload an invoice if you have an actual invoice document that you wanted to see. You would just click the Upload Invoice button here, and then find your document. You'll receive a message that the document uploaded successfully, and then click Save. The next column we have is the invoice column with the PDF icon. Since we chose on the previous screen to upload the invoice document, this icon then becomes a hyperlink, and you would be able to click it and it would directly open the document you uploaded. Okay, I'm going to scroll over to the right a little bit. Then you have the vendor number and vendor column. Prior to me fixing the exception, these columns were blank because I did not have a remit to. So this information is associated to what is selected in the remit to dropdown. It's giving you the vendor number and or code, and the vendor field is pulling what company is that contact associated to. So my vendor was Christina Miller, the code was 2863, and my company was AMT Direct. So that is where this information is pulling from. Next we have the period column, which is telling you what period the invoice is for. The invoice date column, which again is associated to the bill day that you saw on the charge detail screen. The month and year here are going to coincide with the period, and the day is going to be pulled from that bill day field you saw on the charge detail screen. Since I selected 05, that is where my invoice date is coming from. I'm going to scroll some to the right. The invoice amount column, this is going to be a sum of all charges on the invoice. So not your individual base rent amount, it's going to be all charges, all line items within the invoice. The payment type column is going to list what charge the invoice is for. So if I simply had a base rent charge, it would say base rent or CAM, utilities, or insurance, etc. If there's more than one charge per invoice, then this field will say multiple. It's letting you know that you have at least 2 charges on the invoice. Then you have the currency column, which is just telling you what currency is associated to the invoice. If you have terms set up within your system, such as net 30, 60, or 90 days, you would see that here. Then you have the due date column, which is telling you when it is to be paid. If you have a purchase or work order number, they would be listed here as well. These are more common with manual invoices. Okay. Now the invoice source and manual system column, these are telling you what type of invoice it is. For invoice source, you have 2 options, contract or AP. For the manual system column, the 2 options are manual or system. Contract coincides with system and AP coincides with manual. What this means is if I go into my lease and I add a base rent charge to my contract, the system is going to break out those invoices and create them for me. So that's where my contract versus system comes into play. Whereas if this were AP and manual, what that's saying is if you're going into the AP module and manually creating the invoices. Then you have the created by column, which is telling you who created the invoice. Okay. Now lastly on this screen, you are able to export this grid to our 3 standard versions of PDF, Excel, or CSV. This will export to whatever you have the grid filtered down to. So currently I have the grid filtered down to the AP training lease. So if I click export on one of these icons, it's going to pull only the information you see on the screen here. And this brings us to an end on the Open Invoice List container. Again, we talked about the types of invoices you would see here and then what each of these columns means. Please continue on with video 4, where we'll discuss the invoices to be processed container.